Well, ever since this foundational Black American delineation, everybody's been talking and I've been upset. I've been on the phone with people, I've been having conversations with people, and everybody's upset with us because we want to self-identify and have our own identity. Now, I've always said that it's funny because these groups will come here and they want to amalgamate into us, and they want every win for us is a win for them. But whenever they get a win, it's just a win for them. It's one-sided, right? We don't benefit for what they got going on, right? But they get the benefit from everything. The problem is we didn't have a problem at one point of them benefiting. We just wanted them to show appreciation when you come into the house, right? You got to leave your country and come over to a foreign land. You get to leave the country that's oppressing you, your own country, your own people, and come over to a foreign land, right? And be able to achieve. But when you come here, the people that laid the groundwork for you to be able to achieve, you want to thumb your nose up at them and side with W supremacy because you want close proximity to the W man, right? So then we call this out. We're wrong. Well, my little brother, Oshay Duke Jackson, he lives in Africa. To me, he's more Pan-African than anybody. I don't want to hear nothing from you Pan-Africans if you ain't in Africa, right? Living the day-to-day struggle, right? With people pooping in the street, pie holes in the ground, the power going out for half of the day, all that stuff. He's in there and doing all that because he loves Black people that much. He's fully representing Pan-Africanism to the fullest. I can't do nothing but respect it. But he done got pissed off to the point where he's calling them out and holding them accountable as well. Right, so we're gonna get off into this, man, and we're gonna review this video of Oshay Duke Jackson today, man. Really, really having a real informative conversation.
African countries demanded for their independence, and one country would lay the blueprint for that success. In the 1950s, many African countries demanded for their independence, and one country would lay the blueprint for that success, and that person was Kwame Nkrumah. In 1957, his referendum freed Ghana from British rule. And then you will see the same thing in 1960 with Balewa as the first prime minister, and then later Nnamdi Azikiwe becoming Nigeria's first president in 1963. Now, the correlation between Kwame Nkrumah and Nnamdi Azikiwe is that they both went to Lincoln University and HBCU in Pennsylvania, laying down the framework for pro-Black thought on the African continent. And other countries would take notice. In 1962, Uganda would also get its referendum approved to break away, and Kenya would do so in 1963. But the problems that African countries would face would be more difficult than they expected. And here's why. Most African countries would lose the stabilization that helped them develop in the first place, at least in a Western front. Great universities like Makerere University in Uganda or the University of Lagos was started and planted by the British, but that would no longer be the case with them leaving. Once these countries became independent, the British would give Africans an ultimatum. They could give up their British citizenship and then become Ugandan, Kenyan, or Nigerian, or they can keep their British citizenship and go to the UK. And many of these people did this. And I believe this was the same case in certain Francophone countries. Just remember, Britain had educated these Africans, and the new states, Uganda, Kenya, would not be able to benefit from these Africans because they would now be a part of the British crown. So that put a lot of the African countries on notice. How are they going to be able to run these new countries without a high educated class? Because remember, a lot of the administration work was being done by the British or the French. And then
I want y'all to pay attention to how he breaks this down, because this is stuff that we was talking about for years. And he's going to give a thorough explanation as to why they flee here, why they run here, why they run to South Africa, and why they've lost all faith in their ability to develop themselves. This is very important. This was a very, very informative video.
We got this solution. African countries would solve this problem by sending their students over to America. One example of this program was the Nigerian American Scholarship Program. In Nigeria at this point was still selling a lot of oil. This program was set up with Ivy League universities sending its first cohort of 25 government-sponsored students to the United States in the fall of 1960. In 1959, Kenyan nationalist leader Tom Mboya came to America and asked Dr. Martin Luther King to help raise money, start the African American student.
I want y'all to understand this. They came to America and asked our icons for help, right? This is before the Immigration Act. They came and asked our icons for help. Then we opened up our arms, because as foundational Black Americans, we got a problem with tethers, not Africans. The tethers, right? Not all Africans. The tethers, right? We opened up our arms, man, and said, sure, we'll help you. You can even come in and go to school and become the best version of yourself. We rock with y'all, right? Let's proceed.
Students Foundation. Now, this is important to understand because remember, Kenya did not get its independence till 1960. And the UK did not want to help Kenyan students get more educated because they wanted to keep them underneath the crown. So Tom Mboya went and asked Dr. King, other influential people, such as Jackie Robinson and Harry Belafonte, would they be interested in what is now known as the airlifts? And this will start to send Kenyan students to America. And Black Baptist churches in the Black community said that, hey, we would fund some of the money and get some of these students over there and house them. Now, before Tom Mboya went to the United States government to do this, but what happened? No event.
They told him no. It was foundational Black Americans that told him yeah.
But going with Dr. King, they would raise a whopping $39,000 at that particular time. That money, I believe, would go up to $200,000. Then he would ask then Senator John F. Kennedy for a $100,000 grant from the John F. Kennedy Foundation, and he would get it. Now, Richard Nixon, who would become president later, but he would eventually lose in the 1960 election, decided that as current vice president, the United States should do something about it. And they gave an additional $100,000 in loan funding to these Kenyan students. And many of these students would attend HBCUs, most notably schools such as Tuskegee University. Now, this political leverage formed by Tom Mboya would lead to other scholarship programs, such as the African Scholarship Program of American Universities, which is also known as ASPAL, and the AFGRAD program, which will send thousands of African students to universities all over America. Now, Nigeria and its oil boom will continue to do so, as well as Liberia with its great relationship with the United States. But something very terrible happened. But I bet you can't see the terrible.
I want you to see before he gets to the terrible thing. Our doors is open. So a lot of talking points that a lot of our people use, y'all don't even understand how much help that we was giving these people when they was coming over, because we viewed them as our people, right? But it started to change. Let's proceed.
Terrible thing that happened next. Unfortunately, civil wars or military coups started happening in Africa. In 1967, there would be the start of the Biafra War. And of course, there were certain military coups already happening at that particular time. Ghana would see the same thing with Kwame Nkrumah being ousted and a succession of leaders there in Ghana. We would see the same thing in Uganda. And so these students that had scholarships from Nigeria could see their scholarships revoked right away with a military regime change. The same thing could happen in Ghana. This did not happen, unfortunately, in Liberia until 1980. But for the other states, this is what was going on. And so if you're an African student and you're living in the States, you're literally coming to the States to get educated so you can go back. And at that time, it made a lot of sense. At one particular part in Nigeria's history, their currency, before it was called the Naira, was on par with the US dollar.
The Naira was before it was called the Naira, was on par with the US dollar because they were selling so much oil at the time. Well, he's going to show when these leaders got into position how they started to oppress their own people. They started to put foot to ass to their own people, and they didn't like the intelligent African coming back. The intelligent African was a threat to their sovereignty, and they wanted to unalive them and run them out the country, right? So before you start talking about us, you got to turn around and point the finger at your own people for what they did in conjunction with those British. Let's proceed.
It's the same thing we saw with Robert Mugabe's New Zimbabwe after being called Rhodesia in the early 80s. Now, the African youth that should have been returning to the continent, many of them were stuck in the United States because one, there was war, and two, They were targeted as political and intellectual elites. People like Idi Amin did not like elites. Certain African presidents wanted to kill elites or educated people. This happened with Ahmed Sekou Toure in Conakry, Guinea. Idi Amin did not like educated people, and neither did Ahmed Sekou Toure. If you were an African educated student, you feared for your life. There would be no reason to come back home. You would stay in America and start a new life. And many of those students did. You have three tiers of schools that these students typically went to, and that is the Harvard, Yale.
Now, they would lie and try to say, well, we didn't want those people because they was educated by the European. But those same people was oppressing their own people, oppressing and stealing all the money, right? Keeping their countries dilapidated and poor, right? Man, this video is on point, man. But again, my brother's a real Pan-African. He's living there. He's educated on their story. Well, let's proceed.
Ivy League connection, Princeton, University of Pennsylvania. Then you have the HBCU sector, Lincoln, Howard, Tuskegee, most notably. And Tuskegee was very, very popular with Nigerians. And then you also have the Midwestern law grant institutions that really helped out. So you have like Michigan State, University of Wisconsin-Madison, Indiana University, and the Ohio State University. Because of the problems going on in Africa, they would lose 50 to 60% of their investment in students in the United States forever. And when these students started to deal with African Americans, they started to ask certain questions. Number one, why are some of these students, in our opinion, not taking the opportunities like we are? How is it that we come from Africa and we're here in America, but yet these students or these kids or the Black communities, they're having so many problems? Why are some of the Blacks behaving in the way they do? Why are some of them on drugs? Why do they have such a disrespectful or attitude towards Caucasians? These are the questions that they started to ask as they went and navigated the PWI systems and started to, marry themselves or started to go into corporate America. They started to understand they must differentiate themselves from Black Americans. Maybe not all.
Now, this is where it gets real interesting. This is where they start to delineate, separate themselves, despite coming here and begging for help. And we help them when they see us going through our troubles here in America. Because remember, we never got a chance to leave and go to a new place to start over and build our own. We was under our oppressor where we were the minority group, right? They came as the majority group with an intact language, culture, everything, begging for help from the small people. We helped them, and watch how they turn on us.
Typically the common thing to do, as well as certain Caribbean students also. What we had then was African students in the United States that were becoming critical of not only other Black students at the universities at certain points, but Black America as a whole. And what you will start to hear from these African students as they gain more college degrees and more leverage in either academia or the private sector, their voices will start to be heard. You will start to hear terms targeting Black Americans from the Nigerian community, such as Akata. You also see African students delineating themselves from being called Black American or Negro at the time, because the term African American didn't come until the 80s. And so now this particular drift between the African community and the Black community was starting to occur. But from the Black community's perspective, they didn't understand where this was coming from, because number one, I just talked to you about the fact that the Black community gave its own money up to send students from East Africa to college. Nnamdi Azikiwe and Kwame Nkrumah were both educated at Lincoln University.
They went to Lincoln University. They went to the University of Pennsylvania. They was here. They was here amongst our people. So we was confused. Wait a minute. What's going on here?
Was the first prime minister of Ghana, and Azikiwe is the first president of Nigeria. The Black community played a big role in the development of these countries and their ability to come not only study, but the Civil Rights Bill of 1964. So where is this energy coming from? Fast forward. The year is 2019, and Ghana has an offer called the Year of Return. This call to action takes off. And the reason why Ghana has the Year of Return, because you guessed it, Black Americans living in Ghana propose this to the government, and it takes off. Not only does it get Black Americans interested in the continent, it gets other people, most notably the Black Caribbeans, interested in the continent. And there's a reason for this, because between the time of the 1970s and 2019, many Africans who were in the States or in Canada or in the UK had given up on returning back to Africa. They did not trust the ecosystems in Africa. They did not trust African leadership, most notably for all of the failed states that they had witnessed throughout times. Many of these students had been a part of wars.
And this is important when he says they don't trust African leadership. And this is why they come to America, not to get with us, but to get close proximity to W folks. So they look right past us. They believe that the only reason why we achieve the things here is because we've been around these W folks. We've been leeching and benefiting off of them. That's the way that they see it. They don't know our story or understand our struggle, right? They only see theirs. They don't give a damn about us. For us, we just another tribe to them. That's the way they operate. That's what makes them dangerous, because they see the W, the pale face, is more superior.
Or they had seen wars or rumors of wars, so they didn't come back. But Black Americans had no ties to the system, and they had never really been let down by African government. And so now you see the rise of Black American influencers, Black Americans coming to the continent, Black Americans investing in the continent starting to see Black America's leverage, giving people passports. We saw that with Sierra Leone, with Ghana, and now Benin. And then you get somebody like Oshay Duke Jackson coming to the continent. And then when I come to the continent, largely because Africa's top people decide that they don't want to deal with it, guess what? We start to see problems here in Africa. Now, remember, the Africans in America for half a decade were calling Black Americans, not all of them at least, lazy. They didn't want to work. They were ghetto, all kinds of things that the Black community took from African students. Then when Oshay Duke Jackson and other Black Americans come back to the continent of Africa, and we never really come online and call Africans stupid. We don't come online and say Africans stink or Africans have 3 legs or in 3 elbows. A lot of our arguments about how the institutions are run day to day. And when we talk about these things, a lot of these same Africans who are in America right now that criticize Black Americans every day right now, that have benefited from Black Americans historically as to why they're in the States, that stick their nose up at Black Americans, want certain people like me to be deported. But for years, they have been doing this. They came to America. Their parents came to America because Black Americans gave money. Black Americans fought. This is not to say that Black Americans gave all the money, but Black Americans played a role for Africans to be in the United States. It's documented. You can go and look it up. It's the truth. But when Black Americans talk about the issues that face not only themselves here, but the African youth, now all of a sudden, we are the wrong ones. We are the problematic people. But are you guys not problematic when you criticize Black Americans in the United States? Are you not problematic when you go to the UK, as you were doing in the 80s and 90s, criticizing Caribbeans? Were you not the same people that did the same thing when you were in Canada? Were you not the same people who did the same thing in Australia when you migrated there? Are you not the same people that do the same thing when you go to South Africa and call them lazy? You see, the one thing that we can see with the Africans wherever they go is once they come into somebody's homeland, there's accusations or allegations of those same Africans who are becoming guests in somebody's land because somebody let them in there or somebody fought for them to be there, calling somebody names in a country that they did not help build or help fight for. Yet, when somebody else comes to that continent, largely because you refuse to come back, and we talk about the issues of this.
See, he going in now because he's calling them out and he's holding them accountable, and he's saying this right from Africa. He's not in California. He's not in Sacramento. He's in Africa on the ground calling these people out and saying, you guys don't come back. Y'all don't care nothing about your people. You come into a foreign land where, as guests, where people let you in, people are letting you in and allowing you to ingratiate yourself into the culture, and you come here and have the audacity to look down when the people fought for you to get here. right? When a lot of our people was practicing Pan-Africanism at the time, saying free South Africa and wearing the medallions in the 80s and saying it's a black thing you better recognize. And our rappers, Hakim Shabazz, X-Clan, Public Enemy, all that was based around the Africa, the motherland, and the fight, the power, and the fist. Right? How come y'all never talk about that? All y'all talk about is, well, you call me booty scratcher and all a bunch of stuff, right? But you come here benefiting not just off the 64 Immigration Act. You come here because you went to our leaders to beg for help. You went to our universities. We allowed you to come here. We allowed a Shirley Chisholm, a Marcus Garvey, a Sidney Poitier, a Harry Belafonte. So many of we opened up our arms. Some of our women even opened up our legs and allowed you to put babies in them because we seen us as the same. But you came here with this tribalism stuff. And Oshay has the guts to call it out.
And of course, sometimes it can be complaining or looked at as complaining. You want to get that person deported, or you want that person to get beat up, or you want that person to be hurt, or you hope that person gets slapped. Well, what about the Africans who have been criticizing Black Americans for the last 50 years, calling them all sorts of names? Should those people be slapped? Should something happen to them? Should they physically pay a price? And here's the fundamental difference between the Africans that offered criticism to Black Americans the last decade and people such as myself and other Black Americans. Those Africans who benefited from Black America's infrastructure and hard work and effort, because they could have told Tom Mbu, go take care of your own people. But they never asked for the money back because it was the right thing to do. And to this day, we have never as a group threw it in Kenya's face like Nigeria has thrown it in South Africa's face for the money they gave during apartheid. All Black Americans have largely asked for is a certain level of respect. Now, of course, we're not perfect and we do things that offend Africans, no doubt about that. But still, we ask for respect. And the thing that Africans have done in America, even now, is they will sit there and criticize Black Americans. Largely have I ever really seen Africans ever try to go into the Black community and try to give back and try to be supportive. They don't mind benefiting from the structure of, racism and white supremacy, or checking the box and a school application, or getting benefits from the Black American community or Black society. But largely when it's time to give back something, they're now delineating. Here they are saying, I'm Nigerian, I'm Ghanaian. You see some of the Caribbean folks doing it. I'm Jamaican, I'm Haitian, and we're over here and you're over there. We don't go to church with y'all. We don't want to deal with y'all. We don't want our kids playing with y'all because y'all are over there and we are over here. But you do not see that attitude from Black Americans when we come over to Africa. We may have criticisms, but when Black Americans come into Africa, they are largely trying to build whatever they're doing with Africa. They are spending their hard-earned money with Africa.
And that's our problem. We've historically have been too nice and we've been taken advantage of. Everybody knows this. We've had an open door policy where everybody could just come in. And now that we're shutting the door and we're saying, hey, man, we delineate, we become a problem now. But everybody else was doing it to us. And we just said, hey, man, no more of that. No more of that.
They are trying to have a positive impact with Africa. So even though we're not perfect as a group, you see the groups operate differently. The Africans get into America or to Canada or the UK, and it's all about them and their individual tribe and their individual family. When the Black Americans come over here, and even if we do criticize, we're still doing the work. We're still trying to work with our brothers and sisters. And that's why wherever we go, we get that level of respect. But when Africans go someplace, people complain. Why is that? Why is it when people complain about Africans being in South Africa? Why is it that people complain when Africans came to the Caribbeans? You always had Black Americans living in the UK, Black Americans living in France, in pretty good numbers, might I add. Maybe as much as the Africans, but you never heard of anybody complaining about Black Americans that lived in the UK, did you? They've always integrated seamlessly in any community in Europe. But the people who have a hard time integrating seamlessly are those same people that get the same complaints everywhere they go. So my question is this: who is really divisive? Is it me? Is it my community? Is it my group? Or is it our group who has laid the foundation of Pan-Africanism? Is it my group who laid the foundation or part of the inspiration for Afro beats? Is it my group that was responsible for educating Kwame Nkrumah, Nnamdi Azikiwe, in which we now know as Ghana or Nigeria? Was that not our contribution? But what has been your contribution to Black America? What has been Nigeria's contribution to Black America? What has been Ghana's contribution to Black America? What has been any of these other African states' contribution to Black America? I can tell you exactly what the contribution has been: zero. But yet you sit there, you point the finger, you sit there, you blame, you sit there, you take no level of accountability, especially when somebody's bringing up really good questions like, what's up with the insular gatekeeping? What's up with sweeping everything underneath the rug? What's up with not telling the truth or being honest about what's going on this continent? What about the youth of Africa? What about them? Why are so many people having to leave the country, especially the biggest critics, the Pan-African keyboard warriors, who also will never come back, like their 1960s and 1970s counterparts, who came to the States and understood there was no life.
And the thing is with those ones, because you had coups, revolutionary coups down there at the time, they couldn't go back because they can lose their life. Now you have the freedoms and you choose not to go back. You choose to go throw your nose up in some W cooch and let the Pink Panther run all through your womb, come online and say very bad things about Black Americans, knowing you left your country. You left your country. You know we in a country that oppressed us, but you want to come here, take our place, and be right up under them W folks. Because the only reason why you came to America because you saw other successful Black people. That's the only reason why you came here in the first place.
Here for them. So then you get angry when people bring out the same situations and the truth about why you're afraid to come back. So now why do you hate the person for telling the truth when that person's group has done so much to try to elevate your group? And even in 2019, because you guys who were educated and so talented wouldn't come back in large numbers, guess who took the call, or guess who is answering the call? Now, no doubt some African diaspora is, but guess what? Some people who know nothing about Africa are answering the call. People who are spending their own money, people who are getting scammed, people who have no leverage are coming back to the continent to understand their roots. And then when things are not working out for them, you are the ones who are sitting in America based off that same community's effort because you don't do anything for your group or anybody else for that matter. You have the unmitigated gall to talk down on somebody when you have never done anything for your group or anybody else's group in the diaspora, except for Take. And I don't care who is watching the video, but largely this is true. Any of the groups that I'm accusing of, you tell me what they do for somebody else. It's nothing. And then the Black Americans who got sold into slavery are still the ones who has revived the interest in the Black world for the continent. It was not the Nigerians who got the interest in the continent back. It was not the Ghanaians who did that. It wasn't the Tanzanians who did that. It wasn't the Kenyans who did it. It wasn't Ugandans who did that. We know who did it. It was the Black American celebrity who had the influence who did that. That's who it did. That's who got Ghana popping. That's what it was. The reinvestment in the ideology of coming back to Africa, that's who did it. That's who made Africa sexy. It wasn't Wode Meyer or any of these other African vloggers you see right now. It was Black Americans and its diaspora that made that happen. Are you mad because you didn't make that happen? And see, when we start having uncomfortable conversations, it becomes undeniable at this point who is really upset, who is really bitter here. And I'm saying this as a brother with love. It comes to a point, and certain brothers got to have some level of respect. If your group would have done what we would have done, then you would have room to talk. But when it's our people that come over here with our money after we have been historically given for the last century or half century to the African cause, shut your mouth. Who are you to talk? You don't even do a tenth of the scale of what we've done in Africa. None of you. And we were doing it without even coming to Africa, opening up our doors at that particular time. What have you done? I rest my case. Tell me where I'm lying in this video.
I'm gonna stop it right there. Listen, I had to go over this because Oshay was cooking on this, and this was a very informative video from a Pan-African brother that's living in Africa, right? I talk to him every day on the phone. He's in there when the power's going out, right? The roads are messed up, right? The corruption that goes on, right? So we get it, but we have a whole history of being Pan-African, helping them, having our arms open up to everybody. And again, it's one-sided. What have they done for us? What do they come and do for us? When do those nations ever speak up when they see bad things happening to us in America and they speak up? And that's what another thing that make me question about us being African. If we was so much African, when Nigeria sees the injustices that's happens to us, and Ghana, and Benin, and Ivory Coast, right? Cameroon, all these countries, Guinea, see these things happen to us. Why don't they ever speak up? Why don't they ever speak up and try to put pressure on the U.S. and Britain, to take their foot off of us? They don't. They don't speak up for us because they don't see us as their people. They don't go to the UN and say, "Hey, you got your hands on my people." They're not doing that. They're not doing that. But we opened up our arms for them when they came here and educated them, sent them back home. Tanzania opened up the door at times for some of our refugees to flee there, right? Tanzania, Zimbabwe. Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I give them that. But for the most part, it's been one-sided. You haven't given a tenth of what we've given you. But you always got something bad to say. Of course, we got some things that's down bad within our culture that we need to fix up under the system. But for y'all to come here and talk about us in that manner, if it wasn't for us, y'all wouldn't be here, man, that's crazy. But y'all gotta let me know what y'all think, man. What's your opinion on this? What y'all think? Do y'all agree with Oshay or don't you? But leave your comments in the comment section. Hit that like button. And remember, I love y'all. Till the next time. Peace.